Welcome to Cultural Appropriation and Cultural Appreciation class. Let me introduce myself. My name is Moon. That is my witch name, not my native name. And this is a very important distinction which I shall discuss in this class. Tonight we'll be discussing cultural appropriation and its effects both large and small in the greater wild world we live in. Now, as a proud native, I hope to share with you in this presentation why I and fellow natives continue to deal with, and unfortunately, problems of cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is very harmful in our society today. We will discuss cultural appropriation, origins and history, as well as cultural appreciation. What is cultural appropriation? Does anyone know what it is?
No. Taking someone's culture and using it for possible profit without giving respect to the origin source.
Yep. Where did cultural appropriation come from? And what history of this terrible trend has caused? The definition of cultural appropriation takes the aspect of a culture and changes it and modifies it in a way that's usually based on horrible stereotypes and ignorance and racism that originally wasn't done by its people. As if it wasn't bad enough, it also includes taking cultural practices and making profit off of it when it comes to closed practices. Cultural appropriation can also be deadly to the indigenous communities throughout the world. And I will use different examples to make it easier for everyone to understand. How many people heard of a closed practice?
I have.
Okay. Closed practice. Okay. A closed practice is typically closed for several reasons. In Native American traditions, it's closed because we didn't get a right to practice our culture until 1978. But it's typically initiated based if the spirits choose you to, and you have to pass a test. And that also can be applied to ATRs. ATRs I will discuss later. Those are African traditional religions. Many things in history that affects us today has their origins in history. So how does cultural appropriation become what it is? Cultural appropriation started due to something that's defined as colonization. Colonization is defined as overthrowing and forcing an area of people and rewriting or attempting to rewrite their own personal histories and lives. A prime example of the distinction of colonization is when started with the Roman Empire switching over to a pagan pantheon to Christian beliefs. With the Roman Empire switching over to a Christian religion, they were having difficulties in converting the people to Christianity. The leaders in Rome were trying to figure out how to convert people. The simple answer was to take pagan holidays and change them into Christian holidays. That's the reason why we have Christmas.
They're asking you to speak up.
Oh, speak up? Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Sorry. Lost my place. 1 second. This was the birthplace of cultural appropriation. Many popular holidays that we celebrate today, like Christmas, Easter, and All Saints' Day, were originally pagan holidays with pagan names, and these holidays themselves became more intertwined with their religion. Look at Easter, or as we know it as Estara. In history class, we are taught the Roman Empire expanded and conquered people, and making the known world better and more modern, which is true technologically standpoint. But however, with what not usually is not taught the same way they did before. While the word colonization or colonize the world with its beliefs, and they expand with murder and genocide, which is all normal parts of conquering empires, is nevertheless a complete act of barbarism and murder. This is the beginning of what we know as a terrible process of colonization. Colonization and cultural appropriation goes hand in hand in destroying pagan and other religious beliefs, and still is being done today. Even in various pagan religions. Today, the people of Turtle Island are fighting back to have equal rights on our sacred land. Before Turtle Island was colonized, many other places were colonized. If you actually think about it, if you look back through history, we talk about the genocide that has happened to my native people, but we don't talk about the genocide that happened to the pagan people in Europe.
You are blowing my mind. You just said Christmas is cultural appropriation.
Yes.
You blew my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Because Christmas is taken from Yule.
Yes.
And Yule was adopted, like Odin and the red alpha Hebeldawn became Saint Nick, and there's also another Turkish version of Saint Nicholas as well that became as one.
Yes.
And that's what cultural appropriation does, is it takes aspects and they blend them together. Now, sometimes it could be a positive effect, but sometimes it can be a very negative effect too.
It usually waters them down or twists them to someone else's agenda.
Yep.
Like Bridget and Saint Bridget.
Yes.
There's many different examples.
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day.
The snakes who drove out of the trees.
And the pagan. Yeah. Many people do not realize cultural appropriation has changed the way we view history. Take the example of the Norse religion and the Celtic religion. Many of those spiritual practices have been erased because of colonization and cultural appropriation. This has affected all pagan religions and practices. We have to take a step back and decolonize any mindset that we have. Decolonization of your mindset will help you also decolonize your practice and will help you continue not to culturally appropriate cultures. I know people look at me strange when I say cultural appropriation can be deadly. This is where I come to you as a Native woman. My people have suffered a lot because of cultural appropriation. I will go over the different examples and show you many different things of cultural appropriation and how it negatively affected the indigenous and native communities of Turtle Island. First one I want to start with is white sage. How many people bought white sage?
Probably all of us.
Do you know the history behind it? Well, I'm here to tell you. White sage is one of our sacred medicines. There are so many different species of sage, 700 to 900 different species in the planet. Not all natives can use white sage. You must be taught by an elder on how to use it. White sage, in most native traditions, and I cannot speak for every tribe, I would like to be clear about this. It's used to call in native spirits. And it also takes, if you're using it as a traditional cleanser in native traditions, it takes the space down to 0. It gets rid of the good and the bad. The use of white sage has become extremely popular in the New Age movement in the 1960s and 70s in the United States. Do any of the buyers who think they're going to gain health and spiritual beliefs from smudging even thinks about where the smudging metals comes from? Most of these products are made from native plants, especially white sage. It's super popular.
And it's slowly becoming extinct.
Mhm.
So
That's okay. It's being over harvested as well because a lot of when they do harvest white sage illegally, they're not taking just the plant. They're taking the whole root. And once you rip the whole root out of the ground, you make it where the white sage cannot grow back. During this time, many people were not allowed to practice sacred traditions when the 1960s and the 1970s New Age movement started to happen. It wasn't until 1978 that the government passed legislation to protect the rights to practice. And the saddest part of this government bomb that was thrown, it wasn't enforced until 1994. During my lifetime, I was already born.
All the New Age people can use the sage, and the people who it was for, they couldn't even do it either, so it's so much an insult.
Yes. It was called the American Indian Religious Act, Freedom Act in 1978, and was amended in 1994. The American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978 had provided that it shall be policy of the United States to protect and preserve for the American Indian in their heritage and rights and freedom to believe and express traditional religion of the American Indian. Now, I'm not going to read the different tribes because there is a slur in one of them. I will not say. But it includes everyone on Turtle Island and even the native Hawaii people. Includes but not limited access to sites, the use and possession of sacred items, and the freedom to worship throughout ceremonies and traditional rites. Because white sage became so popular with the New Age movement, it is being overharvested. You can research multiple different news articles to find out that white sage has a black underground market, and that includes human trafficking and undocumented workers as well. The people who are taking the white sage illegally and not harvesting it in a way that it will go back into the earth and grow back into the earth. They just go up and yank it out.
Good question.
Yes,
Does white sage actually have seeds or anything?
yes,
Okay.
yes, they do.
They just don't take it, they don't care what this is, or not the rest.
While the Indian Act does not never can say specifically ban smudging, it's a broader outlying term the indigenous religions and cultures do use in our sacred smudging. But with smudging, there's different versions of smudging. I'm going to get to that. If you are not a member of the indigenous community and purchasing white sage or Palo Santo or any other sacred herb with a quick Google search of how to smudge will not make you qualified on how to smudge. Because typically what's taught online is not the correct way how to smudge. Typically an elder has to do that for you. So, what are the alternative sages can you use instead of white sage? Here's a few alternatives to white sage: black sage, blue sage, desert sage, and garden sage. There are a few examples of what you can use. I do have examples here with me so you can see the difference. So, this is actually my white sage that's in my moon. I'm actually going to pass it around.
You can have it, but who can?
No, actually, he was appreciated.
He was appreciated.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that. Now this is actually black sage. Now I do have it sealed in a jar because I have burned it a little bit, so if you want to open and smell the difference, you can.
Is that also known as mugwort?
Yes.
It smells nice.
Mhm.
It does smell
We have
Different
Plenty of that.
sages will
Let's
have
use that.
different smells.
try it out.
Like black
Mugwort is a sage?
Mugwort is black sage.
Yes. There's different versions of the sage plant that has different names. Like mugwort is part of the sage family.
And it's delicious.
It's an awesome tea. Used to be known as pirate smoke at one time.
Neat.
And black sage encourages dreams and visions when you use it.
Damn, I wanted to do that.
Now, I do not have blue sage with me, but blue sage is a great alternative to white sage because blue sage can clear everything, but does not get rid of positive. It can also provide spiritual strength. It can also be used during I'll say that word either.
Ethically.
No. Ethics.
Exorcism.
exorcism, rituals. Now we have garden sage, which is actually, no, this is actually desert sage. This is purity and protection. And garden sage is the regular sage you can actually buy at the grocery store. And that is the garden sage will give you wisdom, clarity, increased spiritual wellness.
This is yours that your mom got you in
Oh.
Grand Canyon.
Okay, so when the house is all done, we can go around.
Yeah, we'll use that in our house when we finish it.
It's important to understand the difference of what the sages look like. Because each sage will have a different look. Like white sage, you can tell from black
Quite a
sage.
way.
It's completely a different looking type of plant. And if someone tells you it's black sage and it looks like white sage, most likely it is white sage. Now we're going to come to a different law, because our wonderful US government has created laws to help protect the indigenous people of Turtle Island, but it also makes it harder for us to practice our native tradition if you don't have a certain card. I'm going to talk about the eagle feather law. This is going to be important. In the United States, the eagle feather law provides many exceptions in wildlife laws regarding eagles and other birds, enabling the North America natives to continue their spiritual practice and a cultural practice. Under the current language of the eagle feather, an individual who is certified American Indian ancestry and enrolled in a federal recognized tribe is legally authorized to obtain eagle feathers and to own them. Unauthorized persons or people found with eagle feathers or parts, and that includes the whole bird, and other birds of prey, like the hawk and the owl too is part of this law
Yeah, I
as
thought it
well.
was any bird, any native bird.
There's some yes and no.
Okay.
There's a whole list. You can be fined up to $250,000. Why do I make a big harp about the eagle feather law? How many people have seen the headdresses?
Mhm.
Now, I purposely got the worst of the worst.
Oh,
Oh my God.
Boy,
Yeah.
Made out of cardboard, this thing.
This is made out of cardboard. Now, when a person gets eagle feathers, it's typically done because they have completed a certain task or they have showed bravery in a battle or a great showing of courage to earn the feathers. To be gifted a headdress fully complete, you can, if it's passed down through the family and it's being gave to someone who is enrolled into the tribe. This is an example of cultural appropriation at its finest, because this is typically what you will find kids dressing up in school. They don't teach them the meaning behind it. They don't teach them what each feather represents. And this is pretty horrible.
It's not even real feather. It's like green, yellow, and blue. Yeah, it's just
I let it go around. It be worn, it sheds.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's shedding.
like turkey or chicken.
That is the Storus crafticus bird right there.
Stories crafticus.
Storus
The Latin name.
like a muppet, this thing.
Now let's talk about dream catchers.
oh
It's like a
god.
kindergarten project.
That's so
I think that's a
horrifying.
bit worse than headdresses.
Mm.
I think the dream catchers are a little bit worse than headdresses. More common.
That racism, yeah.
Now let's talk about the example, another example, dream catchers. Dreamcatcher originally came from the Ojibwe tribe. Without going much into the history, that is for a different class. A traditional dream catcher is made by a native person. Do not buy your dream catchers at Walmart or Amazon. If you purchase your sacred dream catchers, quotation mark,
Being sarcastic, guys.
at Walmart or Amazon, you are participating in bad medicine. Not to mention, you're making it very difficult for the original indigenous people and tribes to be able to make them and sell them to provide for our families. And yes, you can go to jail under this act called the Indian Arts and Craft Act of 1990. Here's the law. I'm going to try not to butcher this law. The American Indian Art and Craft Act of 1990 is the truth in advertising law that prohibits the misrepresentation in marketing of Indian art and craft products within the United States. It is illegal to offer or display for sale or to sell them or any art or craft or project in any manner falsely suggested under this act. That includes production of Indian tribe, arts, organizations, crafts, and representation within the United States. For a first-time violation of the act, an individual can force a criminal penalty up to $250,000. $100,000, 5 years in prison, or both. If a business violates the act and it's forced, several penalties is up to $1 million.
These for making a dream catcher?
Making a dream catcher, headdresses, mudgeon fan, anything you can think of
Moccasins?
that moccasins,
For
anything you
commercial
can think
Yeah.
of that is
Okay.
typically made by Native American people,
I think there's
and you're
other tips for
marketing it
moccasins.
as native
And then-
made when it's not.
Advertised as native
So
made.
again, so
Yeah.
when
Advertised
you're
as
marketing
native
as
made.
native
Okay,
made, because I
then
can make
they're
one and just
saying
I made it, I'm not native, here it is, my product.
Yeah.
But if I don't say it's native,
You still can be sued.
Oh,
You
Wow.
can still be sued if it's the tribal patterns too. Like say if you go to, I saw an example in Walmart, they had native tribal pattern jackets with different prints on it. Here's the thing with Walmart, Amazon, and the big corporations.
They have this.
They have the
suspended
money
us.
to spend on lawyers. They have the money to wrap it up in whole legal things. I'm getting into the dream catchers part. I have examples of dream catchers.
Oh, look.
Which one is the fake?
Gee,
Now,
I
that
I'm
got
gonna
one.
say this one.
This is the fake.
Yeah.
This is the real one.
I'm guessing made by New York now?
No, this was made
because
for me
it
by,
was made by a native,
it was
and the
made-
other one was made by somebody else.
this one came from Amazon, $5. It's cute, but not a dream catcher. This one was made by my native sister, Skywater Stone. And this cost $40. How you can tell the difference between native made and generic made, it's typically the price point, but be leery because sometimes they will hike up the price to make it look like it's a native item. But I also,
But a native item.
Wouldn't have plastic.
Would you be
now
able-
this one I made.
Nice.
Nice. Would Etsy be a good source?
Etsy is an excellent source.
Okay,
That's where my native sister Skywater Stone runs her business from.
okay.
This one was $40, and she customized them for people. Now, when you get a traditional dream catcher or something like this, we do not sell them with eagle feathers, owls, or hawk. That is
Because
a
we can get in trouble.
big trouble, and also there's a ton stack of paperwork you have to do for every feather, and you have to have the paperwork. If not, they could get you.
I would imagine that the impact of the patterns are different for every single one.
It just depends. It really depends on what the dream catcher. The dream catcher can have any shape, but typically it should be in the sacred circle, and it typically should have one bead in it. It can have multiple beads, but the one bead represents the spider, and typically should have feathers coming down because that's the way the good dreams will come to you. And in the morning, they get burned in the sun, the bad dream. But also when it comes to smudging too. This section is going to be a little longer. We have smudging fans.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, these are all mine that were made by Skywater Stone. And these are all her fans have fake feathers in them. Because she went through someone accusing her of selling hawk feathers when she was using imitation.
Mm.
And she had to prove herself and stuff. So I'll let. Every time you buy from a native person, you help their business grow. And this is how we can stop cultural appropriation.
Can you put the name of her business? You said it was on Etsy. Can somebody put that in the chat so we can look it up later?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Skywater Stone.
Skywater Stone Eagle.
Skywater Stone.
It's basically copyright, you know, because
Yes.
these patterns, these objects belong to someone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're just copying them without permission,
Mhm.
without any authorization,
Mhm.
then shame on you.
And most tribes, there's some tribes that they do have the ability to sue. So sometimes they can catch the smaller ones, but when it comes to like Walmart, Amazon, there's not enough money to stop it when it comes to cultural appropriation. Now this is something very dear to my heart. This is actually my peace pipe that was made for me. Now this does not get passed around.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna-
And this is something that was a gift to me by my elders. And this is something I cherish very much to myself. But all the stuff that makes this, I can legally have. Or say if I lose it or something, or someone tries to steal it, it doesn't violate the federal law. Because I've seen the paperwork for eagle and hawk feathers, it's a mess. It's a stack.
What's your thing?
Skywater Stone Eagle. How do you feel about inspiration? Like if I wanted to use the mugwort,
Mhm.
better to my roots to have a regular fan, not feathers, doesn't have to be feathers, and smoke, and, you know.
Well, you can smudge. as long as you're not doing the.
Can I use the word smudge? That's what I,
Yes,
because a
yes,
lot of people
yes.
tell me I can't use the word
Oh,
smudge.
A lot of
Okay?
people get confused with the word smudge.
And
Smudging
the act
is,
of smudge.
the act of smudging is open to everyone. The native version is closed practice.
Again, copyright.
Yeah,
Leave it alone.
Because
Make up your
typically-
own.
yeah.
Typically in the native tradition, we'll have our sacred medicine in a shell, and we have one feather, and we smudge. Now I'm not going to full detail, but this is how we smudge. Now smudging was more of a term that was created because of colonization, but it is mainly pointed back to native people of Turtle Island. And you'll find a lot of articles and literature about smudging, and it does appropriate native cultures. Now, when you smudge with white sage, and you do it the native way, you're not native and you've not been trained, you can have a windy boy, you can have a skinny boy. I don't say the names for reasons.
Yeah.
And also the deer woman can also come too. And the deer woman, she's a balanced approach. She can be a very vengeful spirit to men who are not faithful. That's why we have the saying, look at her feet before you go any further, because typically it will be deer feet. And that's how you can tell if it's a deer woman.
It's a process, just like she's going.
Yes. Now, since we went over the main parts of cultural appropriation with the dream catchers and the smudging pan and the different sages, let's talk about something serious. How many people heard MMIW? Murdered Missing Indigenous Women. MMIW stands for Murdered Missing Indigenous Women. That is the meaning of the name. How does cultural appropriation responsible for this? Oh, this is going to be. Remember when I say we couldn't dress in our traditional wear until 1978? There are many different stereotypes, costumes, and microaggressions that has been played out on social media, and many costumes you will find in costume stores of indigenous people have been sexualized. This puts indigenous women all over the world in danger. It's given a false ideal that Native women, it gives a false idea about Native women and dehumanizes us and reduces us to sexual objects. That they are nothing but to look at and to lust over. Many traditional garb are sexualized, especially the war bonnet. The little feather thing I had. Yeah. There's been a lot of pictures of women not fully clothed wearing them, and that's a problem. With war bonnets, every feather is earned. It's never made of chicken feathers. There are some tribes that do wear war bonnets for women. They do. Okay, what has contributed to MMIW being so bad now today in 2022? The lack of media coverage is the first one. Most Native women, when they go missing, they are misidentified as Latina, white, or a different race. If they're Afro-Native, Black. Complication judicial system. What I mean by complicated judicial system is not only do you have the native judicial system that you have to go through, you also have the federal government to go through as well. Rural settings is number 3. Most reservations are in the middle of nowhere. So if someone goes missing, it's not going to be noticed until days and days after. So let's talk about number 4, male-dominated industries near Native communities, aka pipelines. When a pipeline goes through a reservation, the number of MMIW goes up. Misclassification is 5. And the lack of funding for Native law enforcement to be able to prosecute and to be able to patrol the reservations as well. A red handprint on my shirt or on the mouth is usually printed across the mouth is a symbol that's usually associated with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls of North America. In recognizing to recognize the movement. The fact that Native women are up to 10 times more likely to be murdered or sexually assaulted in some other regions of the United States, the red handprint symbolizes the more likely symbolizes silence and the lack of investigation and the victimization of Indigenous women. Many end up missing and murdered. And typically when you see the red handprint and we do have walks and we have gatherings, we typically have the ribbon skirt on. The ribbon skirt is a historical traditional clothing that honors First Nations heritage and helps represent causes like murder and missing Indigenous women and girls. They are considered expression of history. They can also represent a person's character. They can also represent ceremonies and be used in ceremonies, powwows, and funeral events. And now we're going to talk about the ribbon skirts and stuff. Now, typically, if you go to Walmart, Amazon, you typically see this as a Native garb. This is not Native. We don't wear this. We don't.
Watching too many movies.
Oh,
Too
it
many
gets worse. It gets worse.
It's never been worn.
No, it's
It
still-
never will be.
It never will be.
Right. It's been rescued.
It's been rescued.
That,
But I also want to take the time for people to look at the packaging,
yeah.
Mhm.
because it says Indian Maiden.
Yeah.
Well, that Halloween,
Halloween.
you got all that.
Mhm.
And it's right next to nurse and
Yes.
sexy nurse and sexy
Yeah.
everything else. So it's like, it's just,
Normalizes it, yeah.
well, it's just not a culture. It's just it's almost like a job title or
Yeah.
Yeah.
something.
But with, this is an example I use a lot to explain why cultural appropriation is really bad. Because not only does this happen to the Native community, how many sexy geishas have you seen?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been,
Mhm.
You culturally appropriate.
I was appreciated. It's so good.
And then we also have, at Oktoberfest, you see If you ever seen like the girls bringing in the beer, typically their dress isn't short. It goes all the way to the floor.
Mhm.
And that's something that cultural appropriation is erasing too, because a lot of people think it's supposed to be short when it's not supposed to be.
They probably don't have the boosty on TV either, so that's probably part of it there.
They do. But the dress is supposed to be much longer.
Just to the ground.
To the ground.
Mhm.
So let's talk about ribbon skirts. This is actually mine. Right here. The ribbon skirt, mine has the 4 sacred medicine, or the
Color wheel.
medicine wheel on it. This was actually handmade for me by O'Keefe Ray. She does not have a shop. She does not have a shop. She made it, and I actually supported her in a time that she needed support because she was having car issues, and she made me a ribbon skirt in return. Now, typically ribbon skirts, because my also is red, this is typically what I would wear for MMIW walks and for gatherings. Now, when we talk about our regalia that we use in our ceremonies and stuff, especially at powwows, we don't wear that little thing. We don't. That's not what we wear. This is actually what we do wear. This is mine. As is. And I will actually turn it up a little bit more. And you can see the ribbon.
Mhm.
And this was also handmade too. Typically, our regalia is handmade. We do not buy it from stores unless it's a native brand store and it's made by natives. That's the only time I actually will buy pieces of regalia, if it's actually from a native owned store and I'm supporting the business. Okay. Now, since we talked about MMIW, that's another thing I want to talk about too. Recently, how many people have TikTok?
I don't.
See 'em all the time.
I do. I watch yours all the time.
All the time.
I don't.
On
because
TikTok,
worry about
recently,
it.
we had someone hijack MMIW
Ooh.
because she had an issue with a native man. She was not native. And she overshadowed victims who just came forward about 2 twins who are called pretend Indians, who are not affiliated with any tribe. And she hijacked the whole movement, and their stories got buried. Now we found out the person who hijacked the whole thing was lying,
Mhm.
and now the Native community has became full force behind our MMIWs, so we can get them justice, because these 2 brothers still have modeling jobs with Vogue.
Mhm.
They still have an Instagram up, and if you see a native person talking about MMIW, boost the videos. Because when I do videos about MMIW, they don't get boosted at all. And even if you like pay for them to be boosted, they don't get past the under review.
Mhm.
So it's really important that if you want to make a difference and you want to make a change, lift up Native women voices about this certain situation.
Birch suggests a book called Roundhouse
Yes.
by Louise Eckridge.
The only reason why I don't
Edridge.
have TikTok or use it at all is because it's spyware.
Well, in anything, like if you see on Instagram,
But if I
Facebook,
see something like on YouTube,
yeah,
I will definitely
yeah.
upload it and suggest it.
Yeah, they have various groups on Facebook
Yeah.
also.
Now, there is another way cultural appropriation can be deadly. Have you ever seen a sweat lodge not run by indigenous people?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
There's more of them than not.
Yes.
Do not go to that sweat lodge that's not run by indigenous people. Classic shamans are running sweat lodges that have killed people because they are not trained on how to take care of people. In October 8, 2009, 2 people died and more dozen was injured and hospitalized following 2 botched sweat lodge ceremony run by motivational speaker author James Arthur Ray in
Oh, Sedona.
Sedona, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
The third participation in the ceremony died 9 days later. Arizona is notoriously known for having plastic shamans. Why do I use the term plastic shaman and why I'm referring to it? These people who read a couple books and claim that they are shamans, which they obviously clearly are not true indigenous native shamans and do not speak for us. True indigenous shamans do not take money for our sacred ceremonies whatsoever. We call it bad medicine. A telltale sign how you can spot a fake is when they ask for money. And also, please be careful who you receive spiritual advice from, especially from Arizona. So with those sweat lodges, they really put people into danger because not only do they allow drinking and drug use, which that's a huge no-no in any sweat lodge, people can easily dehydrate in a sweat lodge.
Yeah.
And typically when you go to a sweat lodge, there is a person purposely there to give you water if you need it or there's something wrong. So you don't pass out, you don't have heat stroke, you don't have these issues. Because if you go to a sweat lodge and it's one person running it, go the other way. It takes a good at least like 5, maybe 10.
I mean, I've heard of a proper lodge, not necessarily sweat lodge, but something that could be called a sweat lodge. They literally have one person per room, literally at the door, waiting every time. And they go in like every 5 minutes to give water, if not forced water.
But it just depends on how many people you have
Yeah.
in the
but-
room. Because there's been times I've seen people advertise sweat lodge and there's only 2 people working and they're taking 30 plus people. That's asking for trouble.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like if they go
Yeah.
a sweat lodge that has like 5 rooms, they
Mhm.
usually have 1 to 2 people per
Yeah.
room, depending on how many people are actively going into that
Yeah.
one room.
It just depends on the number of people.
Yeah,
Therapeutic, come on.
So we're going to come to ATRs. And we're going to talk about voodoo and voodoo. ATRs is African traditional religions. This is a whole plethora. Voodoo, 21 Division, Palo, Mayambe. There's a whole bunch in that umbrella. Santeria is also one as well. I want to talk about voodoo, because voodoo is the most popular one that you see in most mass media. The white Western perspective of voodoo is focused on the parts of the religion that seem alien and less recognizable in spiritual practices. Voodoo dolls and strange rituals are commonly associated with voodoo. But the familiar original religious sculpture is not. So basically what you see in the movies is somewhat part of the religion, but isn't part of the religion.
Princess and the
It's-
Frog.
Yes. It's over exaggerating.
And it's cultural appropriation as well, because the voodoo doll is just the Celtic pocket, which they sell in stores.
Well, there is a version of the voodoo doll that originates back when it was actually carved from wood. It became cloth when the slave trade happened and they had to hide their spiritual beliefs and practices, and so thus they made cloth dolls instead. Voodoo is within the most popular media-focused practices that is displayed with violence and misrepresentation in the horror films, aka American Horror Story Coven. A series set in New Orleans. The black female voodoo witch has the power to hurt others and does it with any remorse. The practitioners of voodoo in the show also have sexual rituals and animalistic beasts and minotaur. Imagine Louisiana voodoo, which does not represent any spiritual practice or sacred believers you can think of, that does not associate them with that show. So if you watch American Horror Story, we all know they called the main voodoo guy Papa Legba. That was not Papa Legba. That was the Baron Dundee. Unfortunately, a lot of people, when they saw the show, they only focused into that one character of what it represents. And that's not what Papa Legba actually represents. Papa Legba is the one at the crossroads. He's the one that you have to actually go to before you can talk to the barons and the MIDs. The perspective of most voodoo in Western world media and pop culture paints a false and negative stereotype and false prejudice and spreads fear about the religion. Many movies made back in the when they first started, had the theme of voodoo in it, especially the zombie part. Zombies are real in voodoo, they are.
I know.
But
There are a lot of movies.
But they also were influenced by the Jim Crow laws to make voodoo a very negative and very stereotypical aspects of any movie they produce in a very negative light about voodoo, because they didn't want people to actually understand what a beautiful religion it is. It's not all evil. It's actually a very beautiful religion. So how do we culturally appreciate? Very simple. You have to decolonize your mindset first. What can we do to stop cultural appropriation? First, we must respect closed practices and do not mix things together. Second, support small businesses of the indigenous people around the world. Dream catchers and other native items that are typically sold at powwows or online stores run by indigenous people. Supporting people who originally made the items and being respectful, that is cultural appreciation. If you are buying it from the actual people that actually it comes from, that is the right thing to do. Cultural appreciation can go a long way in shutting down cultural appropriation. Cultural appreciation can be beautiful. When an indigenous person teaches you a sacred ceremony, do not take and make it your own and sell it. That's bad medicine. So I talked about when we culturally appreciate, we decolonize our mindset. How do you decolonize your mindset? While reading. And then you're going to go through some things when you first start decolonizing your mindset. You're going to feel guilt. We're all going to feel guilt. It's been so ingrained in our culture to mix everything together. And you're going to feel it. You don't know where to start. That's number 2. If you don't know where to start, take a baby step first. Be like, you know what? I'm not going to use white sage. I'm going to use blue sage. Every little bit you can do to start on that path is key. You feel like it's too late and not enough. It's never too late. You can always start. And then not feeling it's enough, that will pass as you go down this road of decolonizing your mindset. You're feeling overwhelmed with everything. You're going to feel it. Because once you open your eyes and realize, oh my goodness, I've done this, and this, and that, I felt overwhelmed. Take a moment, breathe, relax, take one step at a time. You feel disconnected from your old self. This will happen. Unfortunately, when you start the path of decolonizing your mindset, your perspective on this world will change. And once you start taking that first step, that's the right step to go. You feel disappointed about your identity. Don't feel disappointed. Your identity will always change with you. Don't let something that you did in the past define who you are. If you're willing to make a positive change, then make the change. You're losing the mindset. You're losing, like you're feeling like you're losing everything that you ever thought you were. That will pass. It's about how you go down the road. And if you keep going down that road, you'll be able to make a new beginning, a new path. In my native traditions, we call it the Good Red Road. And walking the Good Red Road is basically decolonizing your mindset, especially now today with all the cell phones and all the computers, and it's taking everything back to the way it was, and taking it back to the way that we've done it in the past, and reconnecting to who we are and remembering who we came from. And that is it. Does anyone have questions?
Music, because I talked to you about that
Yes.
earlier. I understand that he gave me the Celtic stuff,
Mhm.
and I wanted to learn some stuff that was considered open, not ritual music, but stuff that can be considered like anybody can work on.
Oh yeah. Right now I'm currently looking for someone because me and him had a World War III.
I understand.
So I'm actually looking for someone to ask more for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I have a flute that I'm probably gonna have to switch for something that's made respectfully.
Yes.
I'm not sure where my flute came from, so I can't remember where it came from, so
Okay.
I think it was traditionally made. I'd rather not say that as a fact.
But
Yeah.
the majority of these rules, these acts that came out
Yeah.
in the 90s and 70s that allow you to practice your religions again, do they have anything to pertain to like the Central American Indian tribes,
No.
the more ancient?
No.
No, they don't do part of that too.
Only tribes based in the United
Because
States.
I know that when they were writing the one from the 1990s, a lot of that got spurred by a great number of Peruvian artifacts being pirated and brought
Yes.
to America.
Yeah.
And the native tribes said, hey, that shined a light on the problem here, and they went before Congress. So I just wondered if there's any groups that interact between the countries to help everybody as a whole.
Some do, some don't.
Okay.
It just depends on the items. If it's something that's very old and sacred that came from a temple, most likely there's going to be massive red tape. Especially, I recently saw in the news about Hobby Lobby buying
Yes.
Christian items from the motherland.
Oh, yeah.
I've
heard of that.
Anyway.
And
Yeah,
that
they had it
violates
hanging in there.
so
A
many
whole lot of
laws.
treaties, yes.
So many laws.
Yes,
What are they buying?
a lot of laws.
Holy
They had holy relics hanging in their offices.
Yeah,
Yeah, like the
those are
finger
laws.
bone of a saint or a
They actually
chalice
had to
from a
return.
specific.
Should be in a
Yeah,
museum.
should
They
be
had
a
to
They
museum.
actually
return
signed
them.
an agreement to return.
Yeah.
As Dr. Jones would say,
I mean, the
that
people
should be in a
selling it should
museum.
be the one.
Should be
I
in a
mean,
church or.
Possession of stolen
reliquaries.
goods is
Yeah.
a crime.
Mhm.
Whether
Great,
you,
Robert.
so-
I mean,
whether,
if you-
That's
whether you
Dr.
bought it or
Jones
not,
would say.
ignorance is
That
not,
should be in a
is not an
museum.
excuse.
Yeah.
If you really bought it ignorantly and you found out, then you return it.
Should
Yes.
take it
Yeah,
to the
of course,
Smithsonian or
And then
something.
you know,
You don't put up a
then
fine.
you get your money back from whoever sold it to you
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
but you know, you
Yeah,
don't.
that's what
Or
I
if
think.
you can figure out the tribe it came from, give it back to the tribe, not to the museum.
Okay.
Right, right,
Yeah.
because, you know, a lot of museums hold a lot of things that should be in Egypt, that should be in a lot of other places.
Like the Catholic Church has our items for sale on
Their
their
whole,
website.
their whole basement is full of contraband.
Okay.
So Birch says, thank you, very beautiful presentation, lots of good information. Elizabeth says, wonderful presentation, very interesting, thank you. Ann says, thank you for all the information. And Mari says, you did an amazing job.
Absolutely, I agree.
That was wonderful, thank you so much.
You're welcome, welcome.
And I can't wait to call all my Christian friends now and accuse them of cultural appropriation.
They'll tell you, they'll pray.
I must write emails.
You must write the emails.
I must
Let them wherever they're serving
Now this-
green
My
beer,
grandma
accuse them
makes,
of
One-
genocide.
Yeah.
I have a code of medicine wheel written on one of my drums. It was done back before I knew. It is an appreciation thing, because I was drawn to it. And it was like something came over me to paint this on the drum. Now, having not actually gone to native Lakota medicine man, should I scrub it off the drum? Or is it okay to leave it where it is?
It's, if you did something culturally appropriated, you can scrub it off, or you can gift it to a native.
Okay, because on the actual frame, it has Celtic words.
Yeah.
And that's my,
But when
like
it
Germanic.
becomes appropriate and appreciated, if you do something that they
Yeah, it
actually
was done as an appreciation, it was
Yeah.
like
But
an
it's a sacred-
ignorant
but it's a sacred
appreciation of it.
symbol
I
to someone
didn't.
else.
You
It's not
can,
something
you
that
can
we
do
would put
something
for
in a,
sale.
you feel that it's
No, we'll just-
appreciation at the time,
Yeah,
but you were ignorant of the
Yes,
fact
the
that
actual
it was
meaning
actually
behind it.
appropriation.
Like
Okay,
when you buy white sage, you have white sage and you got it from Walmart or Amazon, there's two options. You can bury it in the ground, or you can give it to a native.
So we should not burn.
You should not burn it because it calls, the best way I can describe it is this. I'm going to smudge or smoke cleanse with white sage to call in good spirits. What spirits they call? Natives. Native spirits. The native spirits come in and look at you. You're
Who are
not
you?
native. Who are you?
But another point, right? If I'm burning something, whatever I'm burning to you might mean something. I'm the one putting the energy and the magic into whatever I am using. Why I cannot use something? Because you might, I mean, you say that if I burn white sage, it's gonna call it spirit. White sage is not, is it only,
If you're
I mean,
using, if you're using white sage like to cleanse the area like smudging and stuff, and you're doing it the traditional native way, then it's closed.
again, the traditional native, I mean, I didn't read anywhere how to smudge or how
Well,
to,
you also
how to
have-
sage. It is, the point of just making smoke and clear the environment and putting my thoughts in it and then let it be.
Where did you, like, the thing is, if you get the white sage and get for a negative business,
Uh-huh.
that's not an issue.
I don't even have a white sage.
But like, if you get white sage from Walmart and you're doing that,
I don't buy any of my chickens at Walmart.
I just using it as an example.
Yeah, that 10-pound box
But
we
you
got
gotta know
actually
where
came
it's
from a
coming
tribe.
I
And
got
it's
plenty of
actually-
chickens and none of them.
In the letter
Family
they sent with it, it
problems.
said that we were okay to use.
It's also about intent.
And about the,
I mean,
the
it
tree
was, we
catchers.
purchased it from a
Yeah.
tribe to support their business,
Yeah.
and that was when I told you, they go out and they humanely snip
Yeah.
just the new growth and
Yes.
I mean, they have plants that are 50 feet wide, and it's been there for 300 years. Because they just
Yes.
take what grows, and then some years they'll say, sorry, guys, for the next 5 years, no white sage from us, we gotta let everything grow back.
Yeah,
They're
that's good. That's
very,
awesome.
very, they're tenants of their land, they patrol it with guns to keep poachers out there, they don't play.
No,
Good.
and poachers are really bad.
Mhm.
They're really bad.
But
Yeah,
these are very lovely people, they are, I wish I could remember which tribe it was, but it is out in Nevada, Arizona, that area, one of the tribes there.
So clearing with that smoke in a Wiccan way is not.
As long as you're buying it from natives and supporting native businesses, it's fine, especially if you're not doing the traditional native way of
Yeah,
And
doing
I
it.
wouldn't
would
know-
yeah,
Yeah,
I wouldn't
you
know
wouldn't
how to do
anything.
that. and I
Yeah,
won't even
exactly.
Then
think
you
about it.
are fine.
Okay. Because that is all we use it for, just
But you're not pretending to be
Yeah.
pretending to be a Native
yeah, I
American.
would never
That's
say,
the
you know,
problem. If
spirit
you're
of smoke
pretending to
apart,
be
you know,
a
that would-
Native
I just say a
American,
local.
that's wrong.
That's wrong.
I just say a local,
Okay,
I don't say native, I say
thank
local.
you.
Yep, yeah, that's no,
We use the term native or indigenous
indigenous, yeah.
because of the simple fact,
Yeah,
we don't like using the Indian word because it is a slur to some of us.
I actually don't use that word. Well, I do,
Well,
but
that ties
mean,
into,
right?
you know,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
Indian, which breaks down into two, they call them heathens, savages,
Yeah.
red man, all of those
Yeah.
slurs came up, and they're all
Yeah.
from Europeans, they weren't.
I
They ended up-
only use-
confuse it
the
with actual
people
Indian
never called
people.
themselves
Those are
that.
Indian, right?
Yeah.
Those are Indians.
Yeah, I have Indians in my, I have Indians that I work with.
Yes,
It's a misnomer.
that's the correct term of
That's-
using
yeah.
the
They're the only
word.
ones
You're
who are
talking about
Indians.
from.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
You thought
India from,
Someone else got
and
lost.
from
They
India,
decided this is
yeah.
where-
Yeah, I'm talking about people,
He thought that
From
straight
India,
from India.
are
He thought he was
Indians,
going on
yes.
his way to India.
That's
and
acceptable.
Shortest route to it, so he
Yeah,
figured,
the
oh, I
question
got.
was on
I mean,
the-
anybody else, I
Could've
just say
been-
native.
Nope.
I just go like native, so I
Thought he
go
was in
like,
India.
All right,
Yeah, right.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you guys.
Very interesting, give us a lot of things to
I
think
feel,
about.
yes, I feel more